Hey Optimantis, Chris here. So, the new playtest for 1D&D is out, and on Friday I covered all the housekeeping stuff in the document, like the rules glossary and feats, and I covered all the stuff for weapons. Today I'm covering the fighter and the champion subclass, but I'm assuming you already know about weapon mastery, so I'm not going to be going over it again in this video. So if you didn't watch my last video, you can check it out. I'll link it up above. You do not need to watch the whole thing. You can just skip to the weapons on the timeline of the video because weapon mastery is something that is just integral to the fighter now. There's a 10-minute bit there where I go over all the weapon masteries. So on the first reading of this new fighter, I was impressed. There's some nice defensive boosts, lots of new tricks, but I figured we aren't really seeing the damage that Jeremy Crawford was promising.
We want our warrior classes in particular to be able to rely on their class features, which, remember, are going to include some of these awesome new weapon options. We want them to be able to rely on those for their main damage output.
That sounds really good. It sounds like there's going to be class feature stuff in the warrior classes that are going to help replace the fact that we don't have the -5/+10 options anymore in Sharpshooter and Great Weapon Master. And if that's the case, I'm thrilled. My main concern is the stuff you're going to put in those warrior classes good enough to replace those things?
So fear not, people who love playing warriors. There is juicy stuff coming in the classes themselves. And that's where we want you to be able to turn reliably to some options where you will be dishing out the damage.
So basically what Jeremy Crawford was promising is that the new fighters' class features were going to make up for not having the option to take a feat that's going to give a -5 to hit and +10 damage. In other words, we'll have other ways to deliver just as much damage. Now, my first impression is that's not here, but I don't trust my first impressions. And I've read online lots of people saying that that's not here, but I don't trust their first impressions either. I trust numbers. So I sat down, I made 2 fighters, I used the old rules for one, the new rules for the other one, and I took as many of the same choices as I could, and I punched math for both of them, and I compared those numbers. And I want to share that math at the end of this video, and then we'll know for sure whether or not Jeremy Crawford has delivered on his promise that this fighter delivers the damage. So here's the design notes. They added Persuasion as a class skill. Second Wind is now a multiple long rest recovery feature. Fighters will get Weapon Mastery right from level 1, and then this continues on the next page. Action Surge gets some limitations on the actions it can provide. Weapon Expert at level 7. Indomitable is improved. Weapon Adept is added at 13. Improved Action Surge is earlier. A new feature called Unconquerable at 17th level. The triple extra attack is now level 18, and there's an epic boon at 20. So this is the fighter class chart. We have 2 new columns, Second Wind and Weapon Mastery. So we're going to start with 2 Second Winds and 3 Weapon Masteries. Then we add 1 more of each at level 4 and again at level 10. A lot of the base stuff is the same. I won't bother throwing it up on the screen, but hit dice, saving throw proficiency, weapon and armor proficiency. Really, Persuasion being added to the fighter skill options is the only difference I noted. Multiclassing works exactly the same for the new fighter as it did for the old fighter. So first level, we'll get a fighting style feat. The fighting styles are mostly unchanged from our current edition, with the exception of the protection fighting style, which did get an improvement. And Second Wind. So other than uses, mechanically it's the same. So you add a d10 plus your fighter level and healing as a bonus action. What's interesting here is this is scaling twice now with fighter level, both in the healing amount as well as the uses. This was always an okay feature, but we have decent improvement here. And finally at level 1 we will have Weapon Mastery, so we're going to select 3 kinds of weapons. What they mean by that is 3 weapon types, so maybe it's a scimitar, short sword, and hand crossbow. The weapons you choose all have one of the masteries pre-assigned to them, though the fighter does get to play with that a little bit at higher levels. And with your mastery selections, you're going to have a choice whether to focus more on damage or on control. Like, if you have the push mastery, you can push a creature 10 feet when you hit it. That doesn't do more damage, at least on its own. but it can combine with other things that might lead to more damage or tactical benefits, like pushing an enemy into a wall of fire or something. But multiple masteries will just deliver more direct damage if that is what you want to do. So we get Action Surge at second level, and it got a nerfing. So the old fighter's Action Surge just gave them an additional action that they could use on anything. So a fighter spellcaster might use Action Surge to cast another spell. Now it's restricted to attack, dash, disengage, or dodge actions, which on standard fighter builds probably won't make any difference at all because that's generally what they were used for, but it does prevent some more, let's say, creative uses with specialized builds. Something else that's interesting here isn't what's changed, but what stayed the same. In the playtest so far, we've seen the idea of non-hit point short rest recovery mechanics pretty much disappear across the board. We see it with the races, the feats, the class features, everything. But Action Surge is still a short or long rest recovery feature, so that stood out to me. At third level, we pick a subclass, and subclass features are gained at third level, 6th level, 10th level, and 14th level. Fighters used to get them at 3rd, 7th, 10th, 15th, and 18th. So technically that's one less subclass feature from levels 18 through 20, though at levels 6 and 14, the new fighter actually has more subclass features. There was one subclass included in the playtest, and that's the Champion, and there's going to be 2 third level features. The first is Adaptable Victor, so after a long rest, you choose a skill that's available to the fighter, and you get proficiency in it. The fighter skills are Acrobatics, Animal Handling, Athletics, History, Insight, Intimidation, Persuasion, Perception, and Survival, and you should have proficiency in at least 2 of those, so you'll have a selection of up to 7 skills to choose from. You can pick the same skill after your next long rest, or switch it up. This is okay. I'll take another skill proficiency, but it's not a powerful feature. And Improved Critical increases the critical range of the champion's attacks to 19 to 20, and the only mechanical change here is that unarmed strikes are added in. Now, this is better on the new fighter than the old one because of weapon masteries. Cleave and Nick can provide extra attacks that benefit from criticals. Vex can give advantage, which syncs nicely with an improved critical range. Flex kinda sucks and I wouldn't recommend it, but technically it would increase the die type of the critical damage. Even something like Topple, which can make an enemy prone, could give advantage on following attacks, synergizing nicely with an improved critical range. At 4th level, we get a feat, and let's just look at the feat progression through the levels. So both the old and new fighter get the standard 4th level, 8th level, 12th level, 16th level, and 19th level feats. I'm not going to be going over them individually, but as we know, fighters get some extra feats. So the old fighter got extra feats at level 6 and again at level 14. Now, the new fighter is getting its first extra feat at level 5, so a level earlier, and then at level 15, which is a level later. At 5th level, extra attack is the same, but since the bonus feat comes at 5, level 5 for fighters is pretty stacked. At level 6, we get our next subclass feature, so for a champion, it's technically 2 features again. First, we get a second fighting style feat. This was previously gained at level 10 for the old champion, and at level 6 they got Remarkable Athlete, that gave you half your proficiency bonus for strength, dexterity, and constitution ability checks, where proficiency wasn't already being added. It's kind of like half of the Bard's Jack of all trades. And the second feature we get here is Heroic Warrior. Once per combat you can give yourself heroic advantage if you start your turn without it. Again, there's nice synergy here with an improved critical range if the heroic advantage is used on an attack. At 7th level, the new fighter gets Weapon Expert. So when they finish a long rest, they can change the mastery property of a weapon to another one that it qualifies for, and under the weapon masteries, they show the qualifications for each one. This lasts until you complete your next long rest, so this is going to be limited to one weapon at a time. And my first thought reading this was, why would I bother with this at all? I mean, you could just use the weapon that has the weapon property that you want. I want Topple, I'll pick a weapon that has Topple. With more thought, there are some advantages here. First, of course, if you do get something like, say, a magic weapon, you'll want mastery with that weapon type. But if it doesn't have the mastery property you want, then you could switch it out. So for example, that magic scimitar is really nice, but you don't use 2 weapons, so switching out Nick for Vex will be a big advantage. And of course, there's just the conceptual stuff. So I want my character to use a longsword, but Flex sucks and I want something else. Okay. Someone pointed out to me, actually, the dual wielder feat in the new version adds the light property to your non-light second weapon. So you could also use this to give it the Nick property. Then you could have one mastery with your non-light first weapon, and Nick with your normally non-light second weapon, which is a pretty cool interaction actually, if you want to play a 2-weapon fighter. At 9th level, we get Indomitable. I have never been a fan of Indomitable, and I have said many times on this channel why. Because getting a reroll on a saving throw you had little chance of succeeding on in the first place just isn't very good. So that got taken care of here, big time. Now your rerolled saving throw has a bonus equal to your fighter level. That is +9 when you get this feature, and eventually it's going to be a +20 on your save. Now, this isn't necessarily going to be an automatic save. I mean, in some cases it will be, but it will definitely give you a much better chance of success. At 10th level, we get our next subclass feature, and the champion gives us Superior Critical, which increases the critical range from 18 to 20. This is when the old champion got their second fighting style, which we got at level 6, and they would have to wait until level 15 for this. Once again, this combines nicely with a number of mastery features. Then at 11th level, we get 2 extra attacks. This is the same as the improved extra attack that the old fighter got, they just renamed it. Then at 13th level, Weapon Adept, and this one I'm going to read out word for word. You are a master of weapons. When you use your Weapon Expert feature on a kind of weapon, you can give that kind of weapon 2 properties rather than 1. But you then use only 1 property at a time. Whenever you make an attack roll against a target with that kind of weapon, you decide which of the 2 properties applies to that attack. You make this decision before the attack hits or misses. For example, you could apply the push and topple properties to longswords, and whenever you hit a target with a longsword, you decide which of those properties to use against the target. So this is really nice. So there's some obvious things, like let's say you have the push mastery. Well, sometimes it's amazing, and sometimes there's no reason to push someone, or maybe they're too big for it to work. So then you could use topple instead. There is some wording here, though, that I think needs to be clarified. It says you make this decision before the attack hits or misses, but what it doesn't say if it's before or after the roll to hit. Like some features are added after the roll but before the results are determined, and others are added before the roll. And the way I read this could be interpreted either way. So I asked you guys, my viewers, about this, and I've got about 2,500 responses already, and it looks like the vast majority of you think it applies after the roll, but before applying the results. And if that's the way it works, then another great option for this is graze. So then what we would do is we make our attack roll, and if we hit, we are going to use our regular mastery, and if we miss, we're going to use graze. We're making 3 attacks at level 13, so that is potentially 15 damage per round. If we have bonus action attack with Polar Master or something, that's potentially 20 damage per round. 20 damage per round, even if we miss with every attack. Now let's say we have Halberd and Polar Master, so that's 4 attacks, but we keep Cleave and add Graze. So as long as we hit once, we're potentially, depending on positioning, getting 5 attacks in a round. If we miss with 2 of those attacks, Graze adds 10 to our DPR. If we miss with 3, that's 15. So at 14th level, we're going to get our final subclass feature for Champion, which is Survivor. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this to you. And if you're like me, you're going to think it sounds reasonably good. But if you're not like me and more perceptive than me, you're going to realize, no, this is just way better than you would have thought. So, yeah, it has 2 features. The first is Defy Death. You have advantage on death saving throws. Moreover, when you roll an 18 to 20 on a death save, you gain the benefit of rolling a 20. And the second part says, Heroic Rally. At the start of each of your turns, you regain hit points equal to 5 plus your Constitution modifier. If you have no more than half your hit points left, you don't gain this benefit if you have 0 hit points. Now, Heroic Rally is the same as the Survivor feature for the old Champion, except they got it at 18th level. Except it's not even remotely the same. It's the same words, but the impact of it is going to be entirely different. And the reason it will be different is the last sentence. You don't gain this benefit if you have 0 hit points. So before, if you were unconscious but stable, Heroic Rally didn't work. But now if you make your death saving throws, you regain a hit point, but you remain unconscious unless you heal more hit points. But because you have 1 hit point, Heroic Rally will work, and therefore you'll regain hit points, and you will become conscious again. Also, if you get a Spare the Dying, that's going to kick in Heroic Rally as well. And will you make your death saving throws? Yes, you will, because with Defy Death, you have a 99% chance of succeeding on your 3 death saving throws. And that's ignoring the fact that you'll have a 28% chance every time you make a death saving throw to pop back up immediately because it'll be treated as a natural 20. So this is going to be one hard fighter to kill. Then at 15th level, the fighter gets a second action surge. This used to come at 17th level. Then at 17th level, the fighter gets a brand new shiny feature, Unconquerable. So check this out. So you've used your Indomitable and you fail a saving throw. Well, you can use one of your 4-second wind uses to use Indomitable again, now with a plus 17 on your saving throw. And you get a d10 plus 17 hit points in healing on top of it. No more bonus action for second wind, and basically 5 nearly automatic successes on saving throws. This is just obviously extremely powerful. Then at 18th level, the fighter gets their third extra attack. This used to be the capstone. And then at 20th level, the fighter gets their epic boon. So obviously there's a lot here over the current fighter. Except then we are back to the question. We no longer have the -5 to hit plus 10 damage options available with Great Weapon Master and Sharpshooter. Can this fighter deliver comparable damage? I think that's really the question, because we're seeing way improved defense and healing options, but it's a fighter. Can they deliver damage? Let's look at some math. So let's assume we're making 2 fighters, one with the old rules and one with the playtest rules, but we'll try to make the same choices for each of them. Really doesn't matter how much we optimize because we're comparing apples to apples. So we'll make a really vanilla, straightforward single-class champion build for both the old rules and the new rules. And we definitely want Great Weapon Mastery or Sharpshooter for sure to determine how much ground we lost. So we'll go for level 13. Here's our 2014 Player's Handbook fighter. Race will be Variant Human, and we'll grab Polar Master with our bonus feat. Our starting strength will be 16. Then we'll grab the defensive fighting style, and at level 4 we'll pick up Great Weapon Master. Then at level 6 we'll pick up Sentinel, and we'll use our 8th and 12th level ASIs to get our strength score up to 20. We have 1 action surge per short rest, 1 second wind per short rest, Indomitable twice per long rest, a crit range of 19 to 20, Remarkable Athlete, and an additional fighting style. And I guess Great Weapon Fighting, I mean, it's not good, but it doesn't matter. It's equally not good with the playtest rules, so it's going to cancel out. This fighter will have 3 attacks with their halberd and a bonus action attack that will either be a d4 bludgeoning or a d10 if we score a critical or down an enemy because of the Great Weapon Master feat. And we'll have the option of delivering plus 10 damage if we accept a -5 to hit. And we get all the other feat stuff, which will be the same as the playtest fighter. Okay, so now we're going to make a playtest champion fighter and match up our choices as much as possible. So we're going to go human. We get 2 feats at level 1, one from our race, one from our background, and we'll start our day out with heroic advantage. Our starting strength could be as high as 17 if we wanted, but I'm just going to go 16 and cover some other scores. We'll also grab the defensive fighting style. We'll be picking up Polar Master at level 4, Great Weapon Master at 5, Sentinel at 8, and I'm going to grab Charger at 12, because this fighter doesn't need to increase its strength. Its strength just shot up to 20 because of all these feats that all increase your strength by 1. So we're a feat ahead. Actually, we're 3 feats ahead because I haven't chosen any level 1 feats yet. So for those, let's take Alert and Lucky. Our crit range is 18 to 20. We'll also pick up the Underwhelming Great Weapon Fighting, so those 2 cancel out. We'll also have Action Surge, Second Wind with 4 uses per long rest, and Indomitable, only 1 of those, but it has a 13 bonus. So we'll also have 2 weapon masteries on our halberd. What did I mention earlier in the video? Cleave and Graze. So I should mention that the average damage on a d10 with Great Weapon Fighting is 6.3, so I'll be using that for both fighters. So our old fighter enters combat. To begin with, they're going to roll initiative, and they're going to get to add half their proficiency bonus to initiative because it's a dexterity ability check that they're not proficient in. That's part of the Remarkable Athlete. Then let's assume a 60% chance to hit. That would be 35% with the -5 plus 10 Great Weapon Master option. So we should probably determine which one is better to use. So we'll start with the 60%. For the sake of easier math, I'll assume that both the old and new fighter are going to get the D10 bonus action attack through Great Weapon Master. So we got 60% times 11.3 average damage times 4 attacks is 27.12. Then 10% chance of a critical times 6.3 extra damage times 4 attacks is 2.52. And the DPR of the old fighter at level 13 is 29.64 if they're not using the -5 plus 10. Now, actually, DPR is higher than this because I didn't add anything for action surge or reaction attacks. Since both fighters have these, that's just extra unnecessary math because we're comparing them to each other, and it's going to cancel out. So let's do the -5 plus 10. So now we have 35% chance to hit, but our damage is 21.3 times 4 is 29.82. 10% chance to crit for 6.3 extra damage times 4 attacks is 2.52. So then it's 32.34 DPR. So the -5 plus 10 is a good choice for getting the most damage. So can the new fighter get 32.34 damage per round? Well, they have no option to do a -5 to hit for plus 10 damage, so we'll be using 60%. So let's start with our base attack. Again, I'm assuming a D10 bonus action attack. So 60% chance to hit times 11.3 average damage times 4 attacks, and we got 27.12. And then our critical damage, which is 15%, because we have 18 to 20, times 6.3 times 4 attacks, is 3.78. Now let's consider cleave. We have a 97% chance of hitting with at least one of those 4 attacks, but we can only cleave if we have a second enemy in the right position. Let's say 50% of the time. So 50% of the time, there'll be a 97% chance that at least one attack hits, times 6.3 average damage, because we're not adding our ability score to cleave damage, is 3.06. Then a 15% chance to crit, because we can do critical damage with a cleave attack, plus a 97% chance of one of the initial 4 attacks hitting, times 6.3 average damage is another 0.92. Now let's consider the Charger feat. That can give us a bonus D8 to damage if we move 10 feet towards an enemy before we attack them. That won't be every turn, but let's say 50% for that as well. So 50% times 60% chance to hit times 4.5 average extra damage is 1.35, and that will also double on a crit. So 50% chance of the charge happening times 15% chance to crit times 4.5 average extra damage is another 0.34. Oh, and our Great Weapon Master actually does add to damage. We can add our proficiency bonus once per turn to a hit. Like I said, 97% chance of at least one hit, so that's 97% times 5 is 4.9. Then graze. So we'll be making 4 or 5 attacks depending on cleave. Each attack has a 40% chance to miss, in which case we do 5 damage. So 40% chance to miss times 5 damage times 4 attacks, that's 8. And then with our cleave attack, so 50% chance we even have the opportunity to do a cleave, 97% chance that we get the hit we need to get the cleave, 40% chance to miss with the cleave, and times the 5 damage that it would do, 0.97. So we have 27.12 plus 3.78 plus 3.06 plus 0.92 plus 1.35 plus 0.34 plus 4.9 plus 8 plus 0.97, 50.44 DPR versus 32.34 DPR. That is a 56% increase to damage in the playtest for the fighter. And it's actually more than that, because I did not worry about lucky or heroic advantage, which this new fighter is going to have and the old fighter wouldn't. And just to make it clear that it's better at everything, it also adds its full proficiency bonus to initiative because it had room for the alert feat on top of everything else. So these results were really encouraging. But then I thought of the elephant in the room. Great Weapon Master, -5, plus 10, we know when it really shines, and it's not when you're making regular attacks. It really shines when you have advantage. So what if we gave our fighters advantage? Do these results reverse? Well, with advantage, the old fighter would have a 58% chance to hit if they took the -5 for the plus 10 damage. And that's a 19% chance to crit, by the way. So 58% chance to hit times 21.3 damage equals 12.35 times 4 attacks, that's 49.45. Then 0.19, that's 19% chance to crit, times additional damage of 6.3, times 4 attacks is 2.52, so the old fighter has a 54.24 DPR. And I will remind you that the DPR we calculated for the new fighter was already over 50% without advantage. With advantage, it's nearly 70 damage. So how's the new fighter as a damage dealer?
You will be dishing out the damage.
You tell him, Jeremy. So yeah, the new fighter is kind of scary good. Kind of eclipses the old fighter in every single metric. And I have to say, I am here for it. Some wording needs to be clarified. Weapon masteries need better balancing against each other. I mean, I didn't even use Vex, which is by far the most powerful one. But the fighter design here is a big boost to fighters, and I think they needed it. Now, I was comparing builds that delivered damage. But of course, with different weapon masteries, there's a lot of customization options if you prefer more control to just dealing damage. So, I think, good job on the fighter Wizards design team. 2 thumbs up from me. In my next video, I'm going to look at the Barbarian and see how it stacks up. Otherwise, until next time, I am going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks everybody, and I'll talk to you soon.